Miss Lezlee here to read a fun story today. I'm going to read to you Abuela's Weave. The words or story was written by Omar S. Castañeda, and the illustrations or pictures were made by Enrique O. Sanchez. So in this story, you're going to meet Abuela and Esperanza. Esperanza is Abuela's granddaughter. And these two make things by hand. They don't have factories and they don't have any machines. They make things by hand. And if you make things by hand, you might feel really proud of what you make. So let's find out a little more. Pull back hard, old Abuela said. Make it jolt so the threads stay close like family. Esperanza thrust the bolt through the open weave and pulled the bar down with all her might. Next to her, Esperanza's grandmother, her abuela, also kneeled in front of a backstrap loom. The backstrap loom is right here, and it's attached to a tree, and then it comes all the way down, and around their backs. That's why it's called a backstrap loom. And I brought one of our napkins that we use at school in our dramatic play, and this might have been made by a backstrap loom. We never know. Maybe Esperanza made those. So, and in the background, you can see Esperanza's mother is feeding the chickens, and her father and brother, they're working in the fields. So they're from a rural area. They're from the countryside where it's nice and quiet. You're learning, said Abuela. Esperanza looked at her grandmother out of the corner of her eye. She knew that Abuela was nervous about the market. Her mother said that huipils and tapestries Abuela made could pull the wonder right out of people. But these days, more and more goods were made by machines. They weren't handmade. Esperanza worried that people would tease Abuela about her birthmark. See the mark on her face? She was born with a little bit of coloration on her cheek. So, some kids had teased her about that already. They started a rumor that she was a witch. And now many people were frightened to buy things from her. Daydreaming again? Abuela asked. Yes, Abuela. Well, the old woman said gruffly, get busy, because there are too few days left. You still have a lot of work to do, and there will be many other people selling the same things you have. Don't worry, Abuela. I'll be busy until we leave. And she was. Esperanza and her grandmother worked from early morning, even before the sun rose, to well past sunset. And when the moon rose and the compound fire gave everything a rich smell of pine, they showed no one their work, not even Esperanza's mother, because it was a special thing that they wove. They wanted to wait for the Fiesta de Pueblos in Guate to reveal it. Here you can see them working late into the night, using their backstrap looms. Soon the day arrived. Bright with sun, the leaves glistened from the previous night's rain. It seemed a good omen for Esperanza and her grandmother. Abuela appeared disguised as a woman in mourning. She dressed in black. She wrapped a long black shawl around her shoulders and across her face so that only her eyes appeared to the world. She was trying to hide her birthmark, remember? People were frightened of it. Esperanza, however, wore her favorite huipil. See, this is her special shirt. It has a square opening here, and it has special designs and a quetzal in the middle. And the quetzal is the national bird of Guatemala, where Esperanza lives. She carried on her head a large straw basket full of her huipiles, tablecloths, skirts, and the special tapestry. Esperanza walked steadily down the dirt avenue of Santa Cruz to get to the highway where Guateo bus would pick them up. Abuela walked several paces behind. She insisted that they pretend they did not know each other. This way, if my birthmark frightens customers, they will still buy from you, Abuela explained. Look at her balancing her basket of goods. Now she's lifting it up on the bus. Inside, they sat 3 seats apart, as if they were strangers. People living in different villages, people with no ancestors in common. See, there she is, way back there. Oh, when they arrived, the noise in the city was deafening. It was so loud. Large buses roared down the narrow streets, emitting clouds of black fumes. Ugh. Horns blasted, people hurried roughly down the sidewalks. Esperanza wanted more than anything to get off the Sexta Avenida, where people jammed the walkways and hawkers yelled from their shops. That means they were yelling, "Blankets, we have blankets for sale! Water here, water!" But they were yelling. They didn't have signs that people could read. They were just telling people by yelling. Esperanza walked quickly, the basket steadied upon her head, her mind trying to focus away from the commotion and onto the stalls set up for the fiesta in the Parque Central. Look how busy it looks. It's not like the countryside where Esperanza is from. It's the opposite. She walked furiously, zigzagging to get down the Avenida Ocho or the Septima Avenida, where the noise was less. Then she suddenly stopped to see if Abuela was still following behind. She looked for a familiar face among the bobbing heads, the baskets, the helmets, and the hats. She wanted just to catch a sight of her grandmother's shawl, like a blackbird hopping from branch to branch in a forest of people, but she could not find her. Esperanza continued to the market, hoping Abuela would eventually find her there among the other merchants. Merchants are people who are also selling goods. The stalls were already filled when Esperanza arrived. Old men and women nearby shooed her away or ignored her when she asked for help. I know people in our class wouldn't ignore people who asked for help. You are quite the opposite. You are so helpful, huh? Oh, at last, all she could do was set her basket between the narrow slats of 2 stalls. On one side, a family from Antigua sold pottery and clothing, and then those were made in a factory, not like Esperanza's handmade things. The woman on the other side sold bolts of cloth, musical instruments, and decorative bags. Everything was beautiful, Esperanza thought. She thought no one would buy anything from her. She and her grandmother would return to Santa Cruz with no money, the long hours wasted, and maybe the family would be disappointed. She's worried, isn't she? She might not be able to sell anything. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen. Esperanza sadly took out her wares to hang them one by one along the splinters in the slat wood on either side. She felt terribly alone. Even her poor abuelita was nowhere to be seen. The people slowly noticed. That means they started looking at her things. Ooh, they pointed to the elaborate weaving. Tourists and Guatemalans alike drew closer to her tiny place and looked up with a wonder at the beautiful work in front of them. They might be noticing and saying, "Ooh, oh, look at that. Whoa." Remember, her tapestry is handmade. She didn't have machines or a factory to make it. The large tapestry blossomed with images of Guatemala. Esperanza and Abuela had worked in intricate symbols of the country's history. There were heroines and heroes, and there was a glorious quetzal up here in a white cage. Do you see that bird? It's green, and it is the national bird of Guatemala, just like the national bird of the United States is the bald eagle. In Esperanza's hands, the tapestry's colors shone as brightly as the sun over Guatemala's Lake Atitlan. People turned from the commercial stalls to stand before Esperanza's complex weaving. When she looked up, Esperanza saw Abuela with a smile across her birthmarked face. There she is. Do you see her? It didn't take long for all of their work to be sold out that day. The people were disappointed when all was gone, but Esperanza promised to return next month with more handmade things. I bet she was so proud. Remember, she was worried that she wouldn't sell anything. And what did she sell? She sold everything. All of her handmade things got sold. Oh, what a proud feeling. And on the way back to Santa Cruz, grandmother and granddaughter sat side by side. Esperanza's smooth and nimble fingers held tightly in her abuela's wrinkled old hands. And these are the hands that handmade so many beautiful things that people bought that day. And that is Abuela's weave. I hope you guys all enjoyed that story as much as I did. Have a nice day and see you next time.